Police departments across the state are being double billed and you're paying the price. Tonight, a KARE 11 investigation exposes how your taxpayer dollars are being wasted on things that have already been paid for.
In fact, our investigation has already sparked a criminal investigation by the state. Here's KARE 11's AJ Legault with double billing the badge.
At the Maplewood Police Department, the hunt under the hood is on.
It should be in the car, right, because we did not get a deduct.
What can't be located,
I don't see it.
by the city mechanic is an engine block heater.
I'm not seeing one.
We didn't either,
But Police Chief Paul Schnell's department paid for an engine block heater.
and it's not on the car.
Just one example in a KARE 11 investigation that has already sparked a criminal investigation.
This is widespread.
And uncovered, Minnesota taxpayers charged hundreds of thousands of dollars for features on police vehicles that are either not there or, in many cases, like with this spotlight, were paid for twice.
We've been paying $187 for those.
Under the state-issued contract for police SUVs, it spells out what must be included in the standard base package at the contracted price. There's engine block heaters, rear windows that can't be rolled down from the back seats, spotlights, and heated mirrors. But when KARE 11 went line by line over Maplewood PD's vehicle purchases, we found they were charged an extra $79 for engine block heaters, $187 for the spot lamps, $53 for the heated mirrors, and $30 to make the rear windows inoperative.
Based on the findings that you've uncovered here, we've paid for items as add-ons that were or should have been included in the base price of a car.
Double billed.
Double billed.
Chief Schnell is now checking
I don't see
every one of his squad
the heater plugs at all.
to see if he got what he paid for. And he's not the only one.
Clearly you don't have two spotlights here.
No, just one spotlight.
South St. Paul Police Chief William Mesrick paid $392 for upgraded LED spotlights on his SUVs.
We found the LEDs draw less on the batteries.
But we found he also paid $200 for the standard halogen spotlights included in the base price per the state contract. Spotlights that are not on the car and for which he received no credit.
And so you didn't know when you upgraded these you should have been getting a credit for the one that was already coming standard?
No, we weren't aware of that.
Purchasing records show South St. Paul also paid double for heated mirrors, engine block heaters, and for those back window switches not to work.
It was probably a couple $100 a car that we're paying too much for.
A couple $100 per car may not sound like all that much, but consider the dealership that has the roughly $15 million a year state contract sold 558 of the Ford Police Interceptor SUVs last fiscal year alone. We're talking real money here.
I can't imagine what the dollars could add up to. I can't imagine.
KARE 11 reviewed the SUV purchases of 20 different police and sheriff's departments. We discovered at every single one of them double billing. It happened at smaller agencies such as Rosemont, Apple Valley, and Brooklyn Center. Midsize, such as the Stearns County Sheriff's Office.
I was paying for two, but only getting one.
And even at the major metro agencies like St. Paul and Hennepin County. Curtis Haas is the finance director in charge of purchasing the Hennepin Sheriff's Office vehicles.
Across the state of Minnesota, the taxpayers are paying for things that they aren't getting.
So, who's responsible? Who's pocketing hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars double billed on Minnesota police vehicles?
Our search for answers takes us north to Fergus Falls, Minnesota. A car dealership here, Nelson Auto Center, has the state contract to sell police SUVs. The point man was fleet manager Jerry Werner.
Nelson Auto Center offers a variety of vehicles.
It's Jerry's name on all the double-billed invoices we discovered, which is why we're paying a visit to his 5,696 square foot riverfront home.
Mr. Werner, AJ Legault, I'm from KARE 11 News. I wanted to talk with you about the double billing issue going on with the police vehicles.
Yeah, no comment.
Well, this was going on a long time. Were you intentionally trying to rip off police departments?
We wanted answers from Jerry Werner. What we got was a closed door and a call from an attorney who said his client, Jerry Werner, did not do anything wrong and had no intent to defraud anyone. Is this just a case of bad bookkeeping? Or did Jerry Werner and Nelson Auto know about the double billing and continue to do it? In 2015, Stearns County noticed they were being double billed.
That's true.
So Lieutenant Robert Dickhouse emailed Jerry Werner with a question.
Do I need to pay for this spotlight, or is this something that's included? And the response I got was, oh, that's included.
Also in 2015, St. Paul Police contacted Jerry Werner about double billing and received this refund check for more than 13 grand. From then on, St. Paul and Stearns were, for the most part, properly billed. But many other departments like Maplewood continue to be charged double.
At what point does this become criminal?
After Carol Evan first spoke with him, Chief Schnell contacted the BCA, which has opened a criminal investigation. Brent Nelson, the owner of Nelson Auto, won't go on camera pending the outcome of the BCA investigation, but tells Carol Evan the dealership launched a full internal audit that to date has identified about $700,000 in improper billing, and a decision was made to terminate the prior fleet manager, that's Jerry Werner, who Nelson's claims took 100% responsibility for the situation.
There was a wholesale level of error at a minimum, deception more likely.
Well, Nelson Auto has sent out this letter to police agencies statewide promising at the completion of their internal review that they will promptly issue an appropriate refund. That's about 700,000 tax dollars being returned. And as we told you, the state has launched a criminal investigation.
Now to a KARE 11 News investigation into double billing that may have cost taxpayers nearly $750,000. It's already sparked a criminal investigation.
And now we know state officials were warned about it, but failed to stop it. AJ Legault asked why, with his continuing coverage in the investigation, double billing the badge.
Across Minnesota, law enforcement agencies are checking their fleet.
I can't see it.
Of patrol vehicles.
So on this one, you paid double.
And this one we paid double.
Looking to see if they got what they paid for, or if they were charged twice for the same features like spotlights, engine heaters.
Also heated mirrors.
Features that the state contract says must be included in the base price of the vehicle. But Carol Evans' investigation found were being double billed by the vendor, Nelson Auto Center in Fergus Falls. After we began investigating, Nelson fired its fleet services manager, Jerry Werner, claiming he took 100% responsibility.
This was going on a long time. Were you intentionally trying to rip off police departments?
Jerry Werner is not talking, but our investigation to date has identified double billing on police vehicles as far back as 2013.
We wanted to know how this could have gone unnoticed for so long. What we found is the state has known all about it for years.
If somebody found out about it, I expect that they would have told us.
A fair expectation on the part of South St. Paul's Police Chief William Messerich. It raises the question, who would not want to stop hundreds of thousands of tax dollars from being used inappropriately? This citizen did.
Absolutely.
Steve Kleiber has both a law enforcement and vehicle purchasing background. He stumbled on the double billing back in 2015.
It's pretty simple. They were supposed to provide black and white, this is what we provide, here's the price, and they weren't doing it.
He took his findings to the St. Paul PD, which in turn reached out to the Minnesota Department of Administration, the state agency responsible for the police vehicle contract. A city employee wrote to the state in April of 2015. It's been brought to our attention that the pricing that's been charged by Nelson Auto may have been incorrect for years 2013, 2014, and 2015. St. Paul demanded a refund from Nelson Auto, and the city was cut this check for more than 13 grand. But most of the other police departments in Minnesota also buy their vehicles using the same state contract with Nelson's. Did they too deserve a refund? Steve says he thought it was likely.
Yes.
So he also took what he had uncovered to the Department of Administration.
What was done?
Nothing, and nothing was done to make sure that the cities and counties that were overcharged got their money back.
The Department of Administration did do one thing. They put a small warning to buyers to double check about double billing. But there were no audits, no accountability, no further refunds to taxpayers.
I took it to the people that I thought should deal with it and address the problem, and basically nothing's happened.
After waiting nearly 2 years for the state to do something, anything.
But you see what I was showing you.
Yeah. Steve contacted Carol Evan Investigates with the exact same information he says he'd shared with the state. Using public records requests, Carol Evan reviewed the SUV purchases of 20 different police and sheriff's departments. we discovered every single one of them, like South St. Paul, was double billed.
If the state knew about it, they certainly should have relayed that information onto the agencies purchasing off those contracts.
But that did not happen. What did happen was the state continued to renew their contract with Nelson Auto Center, which continued unabated to double bill taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars.
This has been eating at you.
Yes, because it's not right.
We repeatedly requested interviews with the Department of Administration to ask why they failed to stop double billing when they first learned about it. They refused, citing the ongoing criminal investigation, but they did send a statement saying in part they've requested funding to upgrade to a modern, secure e-procurement system in order to allow the state to automate system checks to ensure correct prices are charged by vendors. That's a $10 million upgrade they're asking the legislature for.
When someone comes to you in person and says this is a problem, you don't need an automatic system to check
it.
it.
If you know it's wrong, I'm confused.
I'm confused as to why
the state wouldn't do something.
Right.
It should have been audited.
Minnesota's legislative auditor is launching an inquiry after a KARE 11 investigation exposed law enforcement agencies across the state getting ripped off. AJ Legault joining us with the latest development in his continuing investigation, double billing the badge.
Randy, our investigation already uncovered law enforcement agencies across Minnesota were double billed hundreds of thousands of dollars on their patrol vehicles, and that a state agency did not stop it despite years of warnings. We've now learned a complete audit of the state's police car contracts is going to be done.
We're going to look at, first of all, what happened here.
Celine Ferkel is Minnesota's deputy legislative auditor. She tells us there needs to be a full accounting of why the Minnesota law enforcement agencies were not getting what they paid for.
I don't see the heater plugs at all.
Or were charged twice.
And this one we paid double.
For the same features on their patrol cars.
We're going to really drill into the particulars of this contract.
Under the state-issued contract for police SUVs, it spells out what must be included in the standard base package at the contracted price. There's engine block heaters, rear windows that can't be rolled down from the back seats, spotlights, and heated mirrors. But when KARE 11 went line by line over Maplewood PD's vehicle purchases, we found they were charged an extra $79 for engine block heaters, $187 for the spot lamps, $53 for the heated mirrors, and $30 to make the rear windows inoperative.
Based on the findings that you've uncovered here, we've paid for items as add-ons that were or should have been included in the base price of a car.
Double billed.
Double billed.
KARE 11's investigation found the exact same thing happening at police and sheriff's agencies statewide and continued for years.
Nothing was done.
Even though whistleblower Steve Kleiber says he discovered the problem back in 2015 and alerted state officials.
I took it to the people that I thought should deal with it and address the problem, and basically nothing's happened.
Now the legislative auditor will be looking into why the Department of Administration, the state agency responsible for the police vehicle contract with Nelson Auto Center of Fergus Falls, did little to stop the overcharging and nothing to recoup taxpayer money.
We're going to be looking at what happened at the Department of Administration in terms of their oversight.
Warnings, years of delay, and a taxpayer ripoff. KARE 11's continuing investigation into overcharging on police car contracts finds the Minnesota State Patrol failed to act when a whistleblower says he raised red flags years ago.
Here's AJ Legault with the latest findings in his investigation, double billing the badge.
It's a huge deal, and I think everybody should be concerned.
Steve Kleiber has been sounding that alarm since 2015, when he first did some research on the state's contract to buy police vehicles.
Discovered that there was some very big inaccuracies on what was going on.
What was going on was the state vendor, Nelson Auto Center in Fergus Falls, had overcharged St. Paul Police for features on their patrol cars, spot lamps, engine heaters, and heated mirrors. Items the state contract said must be included in the base price, but Nelson Auto was listing them as add-ons, double billing.
It's pretty simple.
When Steve showed St. Paul what he found, they demanded a refund from Nelson's and got this check for more than $13 grand. Turns out it was not the first time Nelson Auto had been caught double billing. Back in 2013, Minnesota State Patrol discovered they had been double billed on about 200 of their squads. Nelson Auto cut them a refund check for about $35 grand. 2 years later, the cop car ripoff again landed on State Patrol's radar.
Did you meet with State Patrol?
Yes.
Suspecting what was happening in St. Paul was happening elsewhere, Steve took his findings to State Patrol's Vehicle Crimes Unit. His tip led to a slew of internal State Patrol emails. One officer writes, "It could be an interesting case. Maybe just a theft by swindle, but it involves the dealer who holds the state contract for vehicles. Not just our vehicles, but many other divisions." Another officer seems dubious, writing, "My guess is it will be like finding a needle in a haystack, but hopefully he can tell us who to look at and where it is documented in the paperwork." Steve says that's exactly what he did.
Brought them about 125 pages of stuff. They made copies of it, explained to them, showed them what was going on, and never really heard back from them.
State Patrol tells a different story. They claim at their meeting with Steve, he only told them about overbilling on their own patrol vehicles, which they'd already discovered 2 years prior, and that he never brought up that other agencies like St. Paul had been double billed. When we asked State Patrol for their records proving that claim, they told us no one at their meeting with Steve took any notes or afterwards filed any reports or sent any emails.
Carpeting is included.
Steve brought KARE 11 the exact same info he says he took to State Patrol.
They pay for an upgrade, but they get no credit for the...
What the state suspected was a needle in a haystack, KARE 11 found to be a needle in a stack of needles. Every single police agency we looked at had been double billed. When we started asking questions, State Patrol and the BCA launched a criminal investigation. Steve now wonders why this wasn't done 2 years ago.
Basically took what I gave them and threw it away and chose not to even look at it.
There are very clearly two versions of events here, the whistleblowers and State Patrols. Now, one thing we do know for absolute certain, the double billing is getting looked at now. There's a criminal investigation, a full audit of the state's vehicle purchasing contracts, and nearly $750,000 tax dollars the double billing car dealership says it's going to pay back.
And that's just so far, right, AJ?
Right.
I mean, we don't know how many more instances of this they'll find.
We do know that we found another dealership had been doing the same thing on a more limited basis, and also that Nelson Auto has had contracts with the state that go back to about 2000, and so far they've only looked at the police vehicle contracts going back about 5 years.
All right.
New information tonight on a KARE 11 investigation that exposed a Fergus Falls car dealership has been overcharging taxpayers on equipment for police SUVs.
A criminal investigation is underway involving that case, and now we've learned the problem may be even bigger. KARE 11 investigative reporter AJ Legault has more on another state vendor double billing the badge.
It should be in the car, right?
I don't see it.
KARE 11's investigation into a state contract for police SUVs has been shining a light on tax dollars misspent. Police agencies across Minnesota ripped off.
Double billed.
Double bill.
We discovered overcharges for features such as engine block heaters, rear windows that can't be rolled down from the back seats, spotlights, and heated mirrors, all purchased from Nelson Auto in Fergus Falls, which holds the master state contract.
Across the state of Minnesota, the taxpayers are paying for things that they aren't getting.
Curtis Hotz is the finance director in charge of purchasing the Hennepin Sheriff's vehicles.
There are a lot of questions that need to be answered.
One of the big questions, was this an isolated case with just one dealership?
That's right.
That's what Celine Ferkel with the Minnesota Legislative Auditor's Office is now digging into.
To see whether or not these kinds of purchasing flaws are occurring in other types of purchases too.
KARE 11 has continued to dig, and we found the double billing on state contracts is not isolated to just the Ford SUVs. Nelson Auto also has the state contract to sell Dodge Chargers, like this one, owned by the St. Paul PD. And now we found examples of overcharging on heated mirrors, rear windows, and spot lamps on the Dodge contract too. And we've discovered Nelson Auto is not the only dealership double billing the badge. Example, Ford of Hibbing has a contract with the state to sell those ubiquitous sedan police interceptors. The contract spells out the vehicle must include, in the standard base package, an incandescent bulb spotlight and full color matched carpeting. But look at Hennepin County's purchasing records. They got charged an extra $112 for carpeting. And when they upgraded to an LED spotlight, they should have received a $187 credit for the incandescent one that comes standard but did not.
How are we going to reconcile this across the state of Minnesota? This is going to be a significant effort.
Well, that it certainly is. The BCA has already launched a criminal investigation into the double billing by Nelson Auto, which told us it's doing its own audit and has already fired the manager who was in charge of the state contracts. Now, we asked Bob O'Hara with Ford of Hibbing to do an interview with us. He declined, but sent us an email that says in part, "Thanks for your work to bring this to our attention. Currently, we have started an audit on all contract purchases to see if and where any mistakes exist." And the dealership tells me they've currently identified 15 discrepancies and are already in the process of refunding that money. And right before we came on set, the state got a hold of me, said they've been reviewing Ford of Hibbing's sales as well, and they actually found both overcharges and in some instances actually undercharges, so just more billing mistakes.
It's just really frustrating because you feel like there was no one watching the shop on either side. Right?
There is definitely some holes in how this process is handled here in Minnesota.
And now you got both sides scrambling to figure out how big this really is.
Yeah. How big is it? We already know it's over $700,000 at this point.
Well, did an antiquated state purchasing system play a role in a massive taxpayer ripoff? A state agency says it did.
Investigative reporter A.J. Legault looks into the claim in his continuing investigation, Double Billing the Badge.
We essentially are not able to verify that we are always getting the low price.
That's an audio recording of Minnesota Department of Administration Commissioner Matt Massman warning a legislative committee back in March about a major gap in the state's oversight of purchasing contracts.
There's no check or balance in the system to make sure you're actually getting the negotiated low price.
And this one we paid double.
A warning proven to be all too true by Kara Levin's investigation, exposing a car dealership with a master state contract double billing law enforcement agencies across Minnesota nearly $750,000 in recent years for features such as spotlights on squad cars.
And certainly some of the things you've uncovered, this is widespread.
The Department of Administration says all their contracts, like the police car ones, are on paper, and they claim to need a massive upgrade into the 21st century with a $10 million e-procurement system to provide better oversight. But that does not explain why they did little to nothing to protect and recoup tax dollars when they were repeatedly warned about double billing on the police car contracts. Whistleblower Steve Kleiber told them about the problem in 2015.
What was done?
Nothing was done to make sure that the cities and counties that were overcharged got their money back.
In this tweet, GOP lawmakers pointed to that failure as a reason to deny the extra $10 million e-procurement upgrade administration says the state needs.
Minnesotans, I would say, expect us to have the Amazon experience. Our service is more in line with the Montgomery Ward's mail order catalog.
And Commissioner Massman then pointed out to lawmakers that Montgomery Ward is now out of business. Well, the governor issued a statement saying he's vetoing the legislature's spending bills, so expect this procurement issue to be part of ongoing negotiations at the state capitol.
And there's still an ongoing criminal investigation into all this that you uncovered, correct?
Yeah, a criminal investigation has been launched by the BCA and the State Patrol's Vehicle Crimes Task Force. Also, the Minnesota Legislative Auditor has begun an inquiry.
Our investigation revealed nearly $750,000 was overcharged to police agencies across Minnesota. And that may be just the tip of the iceberg. Here's investigative reporter A.J. Legault with our continuing coverage, Double Billing the Badge.
Taxpayers, I think, would be understandably alarmed by this.
Matt Massman is the commissioner of Minnesota's Department of Administration, admin for short, the state agency in charge of the master contracts for police vehicle purchases that Kara Levin found have been abused for years.
Taxpayers are owed an accounting here.
Well, there's no doubt.
Law enforcement agencies cheated out of hundreds of thousands of dollars for car features that either aren't there,
I can't see it,
or for which they were charged twice.
What happened is we misdiagnosed the warning bells, if you will.
There were warnings by St. Paul police and this concerned citizen.
Absolutely.
Who discovered examples of double billing back in 2015 and told admin.
And showed them also. exactly what was going on.
We concluded at that time, with the information that we had, that it was an isolated incident, almost errors on the part of the ordering agencies rather than overcharging on the part of the vendor.
Your opinion's changed on that now?
Clearly.
What is not so clear is the true scope. KARE 11 has yet to find a single police agency in the state that has not been overcharged. Even the Department of Admin itself, which buys and leases out squad cars to other political entities.
Our agency has been a victim of this overcharging as well.
Nelson Auto, the state vendor, admits to around $700,000 in overcharging on recent contracts and has fired the manager, Jerry Werner, they claim is responsible. But Nelson's has been selling Minnesota cars since the early 2000s.
Have you been able to put a firm dollar figure on the overcharges yet?
We have not.
What's causing a problem for the state's investigation is police and sheriff's departments may not have kept their purchase records from that far back, and certainly don't still have the cars to check and see if they got what they paid for.
We are determined to get the money returned, assist with the criminal investigation, and rectify this so that it cannot happen in the future.
AJ Legault, KARE 11 News.
Commissioner Massman's department is asking for money to modernize the way the state tracks purchasing. That is one of the issues still pending at the legislature. An update now to a KARE 11 investigation that exposed taxpayers being overcharged by hundreds of thousands of dollars and prompted a criminal investigation into state contracts to purchase police vehicles. One of the car dealerships identified by KARE 11 says it has made changes and is issuing refunds. Here's AJ Legault with his continuing investigation, double billing the badge.
A spotlight on the complex, little examined, but high-dollar realm of police car procurement has been the subject of KARE 11's investigation for months. We've discovered missed warnings, a state buying system with virtually no checks and balances, and tax dollars ripped off with impunity for years.
It adds up into real money.
It adds up into real money, and it's all taxpayer money.
Double billing by Nelson Auto Center of Fergus Falls is believed to be in the neighborhood of $750,000. And we also discovered billing discrepancies involving a second state vendor. Ford of Hibbing has the state contract to sell sedan police interceptors. The contract spells out what must be included in the standard base package, including incandescent bulb spotlights and carpeting. But on this purchase, we found Hennepin County got charged an extra $112 for carpeting. And when they upgraded to an LED spotlight, they should have received a $187 credit for the incandescent one that comes standard, but did not. Ford of Hibbing refused to be interviewed, but emailed a statement that reads in part, "We were deeply concerned when we heard about the KARE 11 report." They tell us, according to their internal audit, in the last 3 years, they sold 496 police vehicles and found 67 purchase orders with overcharges totaling $10,450. How did it happen? Ford of Hibbing claims it was customer mistake, that law enforcement agencies did not fill out their purchase orders correctly. They write, "We've taken corrective action by adding another step in the review process, so this does not happen in the future." The Minnesota Department of Administration oversees the contracts. Commissioner Matt Massman says he agrees Ford of Hibbing's issue appears to be more isolated errors than the widespread double billing KARE 11 exposed taking place with Nelson Auto that remains under criminal investigation.
They appear to be different at this time. They appear to be very different. But I think they both demonstrate some of the fundamental flaws that we're trying to fix in the system.
Commissioner Massman says the big system fix is a $10 million upgrade to a modern electronic procurement system. To date, the legislature has refused to include that in the budget. The criminal investigation and legislative audit initiated as a result of our reporting remain ongoing. Julie?
Randy, a theft by swindle scheme. That's how prosecutors describe what we uncovered, and it's cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars.
This was going on a long time. Were you intentionally trying to rip off police departments?
Jerry Werner wouldn't answer our questions back in April. He'll now have to answer for his actions in the Otter Tail County Courthouse, where he stands accused in this indictment of 5 counts of theft by swindle.
You're charging this as a scheme to defraud taxpayers?
Correct. And it really is.
Michelle Eldine is Otter Tail County's chief deputy prosecutor.
Unfortunately, it went on for quite some time.
The criminal investigation began after Carol Evans started asking questions about the way police agencies all across Minnesota were being double billed for items such as spot lamps and heated mirrors that the state contract says must be included in the base price.
Based on the findings that you've uncovered here, we've paid for items as add-ons that were or should have been included in the base price of a car.
Double billed.
Double billed.
We found examples of double billing in every single one of the dozens of departments we've checked.
You know, a couple $100 a car that we're paying too much for.
What's more, we uncovered evidence the overbilling on the state contract by Jerry Werner, the fleet manager at Nelson Auto Center in Fergus Falls, was caught years earlier. State Patrol and St. Paul PD both received refunds, but Nelson Auto continued to double bill on sales to other departments.
Made it look like there's choices of who you stole from and who you didn't.
Kent Marshall is Jerry Werner's attorney.
I don't think that he did anything sneaky or tricky.
He contends the state contracts are confusing and any double billing was accidental.
There were mistakes made, but they were honest mistakes.
However, court records detail other employees in the fleet department at Nelson Auto telling Werner in the past that what they were doing was morally wrong. But the double billing continued with, according to court records, a 40% commission on the profits going into Jerry Werner's pockets.
This appears to be a case of misplaced trust in a state vendor?
I would say a huge misplaced trust, unfortunately.
Well, we learned today that Jerry Werner has already personally paid back $325,000. Nelson Auto's owners have said they'll be refunding another roughly $500,000 to 205 police agencies across the state who were defrauded. So far, no other employees at Nelson Auto have been charged, despite the court record showing at least 2 others were aware of that double billing, Randy.
Wow. All right. Thank you, AJ. Great reporting.